Good morning, I'm Jared Hurry. I'm one of the ag agents here in Bertie County, and we're in Lewiston at the Peanut Belt Research Station today for our CHROME Regional Field Day. Behind me we have our Thrips plot on cotton. We have several different treatments out here that you'll be seeing later on in some of our videos coming up. We're going to have Dr. Dominic Reisig speak to us a little bit about our different treatments and how to manage thrips in cotton.
Well, what we have out here is a cotton plot planted to untreated seed. Now we recommend, with our extension recommendations, an automatic seed treatment. We want every single cotton seed out there planted with the seed treatment, and this plot here really demonstrates why. Where the cotton should be at is, here from a seedling I pulled from this plot, is 5 true leaves that I can count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 true leaves. And this is from the untreated plot. I notice a fair bit of thrips damage to the leaves. You can see that when this leaf unfurled, it's kind of deformed. It's got some holes. It's got some tissue missing. It's not, doesn't have the full surface area that it should have, and that's a result of a thrips injury. What these thrips do is the adults move into the field. They like to lay their eggs here in these fleshy cotyledons. And so once those eggs develop, they hatch, and they'll feed on those leaves before they're unfurled. So when they unfurl, they're kind of messed up. A lot of the seedlings in the plot look like this one here, and you notice the size difference. You can notice, well, this has a J root on it, but not only do they affect above ground biomass, they also affect below ground biomass. So if you got a small studded plant, you're going to have a small stunted root system. And of course that can mean yield gets affected later on in the season, but even if yield isn't affected, if this plant's able to catch up, it's probably going to be delayed in maturity. So you wouldn't really want to manage a field where you had plants of varying maturity like you have with this here. So this is why thrips control is so important and why we recommend that growers avoid planting untreated seed. This here is what we call a Cadillac treatment. We have a seed treatment, we have an in-furrow insecticide, so in this case it's imidacloprid in furrow, MyroPro, and then we have a orthene treatment at the first true leaf. Now environmental conditions were such that cotton didn't grow very quickly this year, so we were sitting at 1 true leaf for a long time. What we really encourage with the spray is that the growers peel back the cotyledons and look for that first true leaf as it's emerging from those cotyledons. So you can see in this plot, some of these cotton plants are stunted. So here's an example of a plant that only has 2 true leaves on it with the 3rd true leaf poking out, but there's very little thrips injury on these leaves. So there's a little bit here, but this plant was probably stunted from just poor environmental growing conditions this spring. And it really helped that we had that thrips protection on there to give it a fighting chance. So we're probably going to see some variability in this plot, but not as much as compared to what we saw in the untreated plots. We are seeing a lot of plants like this here. So we have 5 true leaves, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this is what we want to see when that leaf comes out. We want to see that nice shiny leaf with no deformations on it. And so these treatments were very effective to control our thrips problem. This plot here is planted with treated seed, and I was told the planting date was May 11th. Now we know the planting date's really important for thrips pressure. We have a new predictor that's based on a model. It's called the Thrips Infestation Predictor. And what this tool allows us to do is to use planting date to predict what our thrips pressure is going to look like. It takes into account the number of thrips generations. It actually looks at the growing degree days in the fall to predict how many thrips generations are going to come with that planting date. But it also takes into account the weather that cotton is going to experience. So it incorporates growing degrees for cotton, because we know that rainfall, the number of thrips generations, thrips dispersal, as well as how fast the cotton growing are all factors that tell us how bad damage is going to be from thrips and cotton. And so using that tool, and I looked at it, and if a grower were to call me and say, I'm planting on May 11th, should I use an in-furrow product? I would look at that tool and I'd say, for this year, when I look at that tool, planting on May 11th, you're probably right on the line where you maybe could get away without an in-furrow. And if you do, you want to be sure that you're scouting to know if you need to make a spray. And so this is what that cotton would look like. I pulled a fairly average plant from the plot if the grower just used the treated seed and did not spray. Now in this case, thrips pressure was fairly heavy, but we also had, not very good growing conditions for seedling cotton. And so that we can see that as this first true leaf unfolded, we had a little bit of thrips injury. This is probably not something I'd consider economical. As the second true leaf came out, the same thing. But then as we get to the third and the fourth, that's where we're really starting to see problems, and that's likely because that seed treatment had played out by that point. So in this case, there were likely larval thrips present on the plant, and it would have paid for that grower to spray, which is why it's so important for us to not only use the tools that we have for prediction, but also to use scouting and thresholds to evaluate whether or not we need some additional protection over top of that seed treatment when we put it in the ground. So this plot is with a treated seed and then a spray targeted at that first true leaf. So we can look at probably an average plant from the plot and count our 5 true leaves that we have right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, and the 5th leaf poking out. And I do see a little bit of injury here on this first leaf. So probably the thrips were feeding on that first true leaf, overcoming some of the seed treatment before the spray took place. I do see a little bit of feeding here on the second leaf, but the 3rd, 4th, and 5th leaf are entirely protected from that foliar spray. So we see a marked improvement over top of the seed treatment from that well-timed spray. Now, if we compare this to the treatment with the in-furrow insecticide, we do notice an improvement in terms of how the cotton looks, but then we're really splitting hairs in terms of if we're seeing something economical. So there's kind of no one-size-fits-all management option for growers. The more you put down in planting, the more protection you're going to get. May or may not pay off. We do notice, though, when you make that spray well-timed at threshold, if the thrips are there, it's probably going to pay off on average in the long run, at least in terms of having that cotton mature on time and maybe even preserving some yield. Well, this is another Cadillac treatment. This is fully unprotected seed, untreated, no insecticide, but with an in-furrow called Ag Logic. Now, Ag Logic is aldicarb, and it's Timic rebranded. So it's a product that growers have a lot of experience with, and I've been told this is put down at a 5-pound rate, which is a great rate for thrips. And we can find a lot of seedlings out there with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 leaves, and we're really hard pressed to find any sort of damage at all. So it's a very effective product for thrips. It's getting this cotton growing up and strong. It's not bulletproof. We do find some seedlings like this here where we do see some thrips damage, but this is nothing that we'd consider economical. So this is a good viable thrips treatment if growers want to use it at planting to forego the use of the seed treatment. We've been out here today talking a lot about cover crops. A lot of reasons we should plant cover crops. I think we settled on maybe the primary reason is to preserve soil quality and avoid sandblasting and things like that. Cover crops can actually provide a benefit for thrips if used in the right way. So when we get a nice good cover over top of cotton as it's emerging, we think that the thrips are not able to see the seedling cotton as well. So when we get a nice heavy cover, we can actually make cotton sometimes look as good as a seed treatment alone, just with having a nice heavy cover that's there. Now, the amount of cover you have is going to vary, of course, depending on what kind of cover crop you use, when you plant it, and when you burn it down. So the earlier you plant it, obviously you're going to get more cover. And this, I've been told here, is wheat. Now, burn down is really important, especially with a crop like wheat. Wheat are actually hosts for thrips. So if we burn down the same day that we're planting, as soon as that cotton emerges, those thrips are going to be looking for the next green thing in that field, which of course is going to be your cotton. So if you're going to burn down your cover crop, we recommend that you do that 3 to 4 weeks prior to planting. Of course, that's going to affect biomass. The longer you leave that cover crop in the field, the more biomass you're going to get. So you have to kind of walk the line, if you will, between achieving enough biomass with your cover crop to get the thrips benefits. Now, I understand there's some reasons you may want to terminate earlier or later, but do realize that that's going to influence what you have in terms of level of thrips and what you may have to do to control those thrips as a result. Also important to keep in mind that what's going on with the cover crop in your field may not be independent of your neighbor's field. So if your neighbor has a cover crop and they burn it down, you might expect those thrips to be migrating from that cover into your field. And that's something that Thrips infestation predictor tool that we mentioned doesn't take into account. So it's really important to take local conditions into account when you're thinking about thrips control in cotton.